What's going on, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Lone Duck's Gun Dog Chronicles. I'm excited to sit down tonight with Dr. Ruth Ann. She is the senior veterinarian at Purina, the food that fuels a truck of Lone Duck. Dr. Ruth Ann, welcome to the show. Thank you for coming and sharing your knowledge with our listeners. Do me a favor, tell everybody a little bit about yourself.
Okay, so first, thanks for having me. And second, I'm based out of Boulder, Colorado, and been with Purina going on 20 years this November. So for your listeners, if they're doing math, I started as child labor at Purina. Still very young. If we're talking about maturity level, definitely still young. But I grew up in Baton Rouge, Louisiana. I'm a diehard LSU Tiger fan. I bleed purple and gold, and have a hard-charging yellow Labrador who's the one that got me into the world of upland game and waterfowl hunting. I like to call Finn my gateway dog into this world because now we also have a wire-haired pointing Griffon. She just turned a year and a half. Her name is Journey, and so we are dipping our toe kind of into the pointing dog world. Out here in Colorado, it offers, everything from ptarmigan to grouse, and having, a great pointing bird dog just kind of opens up some versatility for us. I also have a 10-year-old human child, and he is all baseball all the time. So I spend a lot of my life next to looking through that cyclone fencing, but he also is a rising avid outdoorsman. That's kind of one of the reasons that brought us out to Colorado is the outdoor lifestyle that it offers. And he is all things rough and tumble and loves to tag along. He's been walking the pheasant fields with us since he was about 3 years old. So it's really fun to be able to raise him in that way.
Very cool. So did you go to LSU for your veterinarian school?
I did. Yep. I went there for undergrad as well as vet school. So my one kind of claim to fame or fun story was I was up at school studying before one of the LSU football games, and I had my dog with me. And at the time, we used to bring Mike the Tiger into Tiger Stadium, and he was in the back of his enclosure. He was in the front of his enclosure, and they needed him in the back to be able to load him into his little trailer to go to the stadium, and he wouldn't come out. And so they asked if they could borrow my dog to lure him to the back of his enclosure. And I was like, excuse me? I was like, he is a wild animal. She was like a 40-pound lab mix that I had rescued from the shelter. And so I had to look over their whole safety protocol and everything. And I was like, okay. They were adamant that he couldn't get to her. They just needed her to leave her scent there in the back. And so we did. We went down there, and Maddie walked around the back of his enclosure, and they took her out, opened the gate, and he came in and kind of sniffed around, and then they got him loaded into the trailer. And I got to pet him through his trailer little
That's
gate
awesome.
there. And yeah, it was really neat, and everybody lived, so all good.
It reminds me of Jurassic Park, where they do like the tie the goat to get the T-Rex to come in. Like,
right?
Poor goat. Poor Maddie.
Yeah, exactly.
That's wild. Did you ever do any hunting while you're out that way?
I did a little bit of deer hunting when I lived in Baton Rouge, but my family didn't really hunt, so it just kind of depended on if I was at the time dating a guy, or I was also a bartender, so the owner of the bar was a hunter, so I'd go out with them here and there, but didn't really get into hunting until we moved out to Colorado.
Very cool.
So then what brought about like all the like hunting with dogs and stuff?
Really the dog. So, I mean, I've, had dogs my whole life, and they've always been, I'm a avid distance runner, marathoner, triathlete, and they've always been my training buddy, as well as like as a female going out running early in the morning, my security blanket. And I just never really, like, having not had much experience in the upland game world, in the waterfowl world, just I was like, yeah, it's kind of neat. And I like the athletic dog. And then when we moved out to Colorado, my husband had always tried to get me to go duck hunting. And I was like, sitting in a blind when it's cold and overcast or spitting rain and windy, and those are the perfect conditions, sounds terrible to me. and and so when we moved out here and he was like, hey, so there's a lot of really great pheasant, hunting in and around eastern Colorado, western Kansas. And he was like, we had adopted Finn from some friends who were getting a divorce and neither one of them wanted him. And it was either us or Finn, as a 2-year-old Labrador, was going to our friend's 80-year-old mother. And I was like, that is a recipe for disaster. We will take him. And he was professionally obedience trained, but he was never professionally hunt trained. And Dean just was like, let's take him out. I just want to go see what he can do in the pheasant field. And it was like, his genetic switch was flipped. And then when he saw that, he was like, I think you need to come out. I think you would really like pheasant hunting. You're walking and running and, in, different terrain and whatnot. And I went out there and I watched Finn and I was like, he is in his happy place. Like, this is what, like, the expression on his face and all of that. I'm like, that's the same expression I get when I have just an amazing run, or, so I was like, this is like his, his sole purpose out here. And I was like, I need to learn how to do this so that I can help him do what he loves to do more often.
That's really cool. I love that the dog brought you into that sport even more and opens your doors to even more opportunities. And now you've got a Griffon, and just, you're not the only one. And even like us, dogs brought us into the sports and got us out hunting on rainy, crappy days. We're like, well, it's what we work for. We got to go. So it's always goes back to the dog.
Yep.
Really cool.
Yep.
I do want to ask you a quick question. I'll digress for 1 second. One of my good friends likes to run too. And they're going to get a puppy, and they lost their dog that would go on runs with her. And she's like, well, can the dog run with me? And so I gave my professional opinion on it. And so I'd like your professional opinion on running with a dog and what's good for their joints and health and et cetera.
Yeah. Yeah. So it's not too different from like youth sports, where they talk about like making sure there's variety and you get those repetitive motion injuries and all of that if you don't have your kid diversify the sports that they're in. And so it's pretty similar for our dogs. And they, thankfully though, their skeletal system matures a lot more quickly than a human's does. But we really want to wait until they are done growing. So skeletally mature is what we would say in the veterinary world, but making sure that their growth plates and all of that are closed before they start really going on leash runs with us. So it's different when like you take them to, if you're going out to walk the woods or whatever, and they're kind of running at their own pace, or you're going hiking and they have their obedience skills dialed in. And so you've got them off leash and they're kind of running and stopping and starting at their own pace. That I am a big fan of. One, because it's a softer surface. Two, they're managing their own pace and it's not that, we're just the steady trot next to us. And it also helps with their proprioception because it's not just a flat concrete or a flat asphalt or something like that. So it's one of those that like, for example, Journey is 18 months old. We just had her spayed because we are not going to breed her, and just had her spayed literally last week. And while she was in there and under anesthesia, I was like, let's take x-rays of her hips and just like, let's see where her growth plates are. Because the longest right now that she's gone with me on a run is 3 miles. I won't take her more than that. But we've been on, 7 or 8 mile hikes, but again, she's off leash. So she's doing what she wants and needs to do at whatever pace kind of thing.
Right. So that's the advice I gave as well. And like thank you. Yeah, pretty much a veterinarian too. I mean, I live near Cornell.
Yeah, well, see, there you go.
Yeah, just in the water. So, but I still get worried about pounding on pavement. And like, you had mentioned you are a marathon runner. So what would be like a limit distance wise on pavement that you feel comfortable taking the dog, and how many days a week and things like that, where it's just, I wouldn't say 0 is a number, but probably further every day. Like there's got to be a happy medium for everybody, right?
Sure. Yeah. And it certainly is going to depend on the breed and the fitness and the age of the dogs, right? So even Finn, my yellow lab, last year, he'll be 11 in January. So he's 10 and a half now. And last November, he trained with me. I trained him for the New York Marathon, and he ran, I had a 22 miler, I had a 20 miler run, and he was right alongside. But he's also been an athlete his whole life. He has, he's in good, knock on wood, good physical condition as far as we know, and all the blood work that we've run recently and all of that. So he's used to that. Like we probably run together, probably 4 or 5 days a week, and anywhere between, I'm not training for anything right now. So, we'll do our long run will be 10 or 12 miles on the weekend, and we'll run 3 or 4 times during the week. And so it just really depends. Like if you had a Great Dane, I would not recommend them being your training buddy going 22 miles. But you can certainly condition the dog to run. There are endurance athletes for sure, and especially our sporting dog breeds. And so for us, like if you're running an 8-minute mile for them, that's, would probably be the equivalent of about a human running a 12 or 13-minute mile. So they're just kind of trotting along. They are not, there's not a whole lot of over aerobic endurance, aerobic stress and strain that's happening when they're doing that. So
is that all really
when we're training, it's a mix of pavement and gravel and dirt, just kind of wherever the path takes us. But ideally, right, we would have a mix of that because of the impact, but then 2, kind of going back to them hiking, it's different proprioception in their pads and their paws, and so they're gonna have to use different like tiny muscles in their in their feet and things like that are also so important for their stability.
Cool. Great answer. I love that. Thank you. All right. Sorry to digress. Let's get back into it. So you went to LSU veterinarian and graduated that. Did you jump right into Purina, or how did you navigate your first few years as DVM?
Yeah. So I was in private practice for about 2.5 years in Austin, actually. Followed a boy over from Baton Rouge over to Austin. The boy didn't work out, but Austin did. So I spent probably 14 years in Austin before we moved out here to Boulder, and loved private practice. Fell in love with surgery. Just had a really great time. But my dad is an entrepreneur, and he always had like the mantra of us when we were growing up. He was always telling us, like, if you have an opportunity to have an interview, just go have the interview. Like the biggest thing you're going to lose is maybe an hour of your time, but who knows what door that's going to open. So I had a classmate of mine who had been involved with Purina when we were in school, and then had joined Purina full time. And he was like, "Hey, we're hiring veterinarians. Do you know any that would want to work for Purina?" And I was like, I don't know. Maybe me. Let's have a phone interview and find out. And so I did. And the crazy thing is, during veterinary school, I actually tracked mixed animal, which meant I kind of had a variety of both small animal courses as well as large animal courses and electives. And I opted to take large animal nutrition because it was an easier class taught by an easier professor.
Hell yeah, that's my kind of college.
Right? I'm like, no, this vet school is stressful enough. Why voluntarily add more stress?
Yeah.
And then I had a paralyzing fear of public speaking. So I would throw up before I had to give a presentation. It was really bad. It's actually also one of the reasons why I took large animal nutrition, because small animal, you had to give a 20-minute presentation as part of your grade. And I fast forward, 5 or 6 years, and I had the opportunity to interview with Purina. And after meeting the people, seeing the company, just getting a whole immersion into the culture, I voluntarily took a job to publicly speak on small animal nutrition. So. And I had no idea on purpose. But I can remember.
That wasn't lost in the fine print. One of those things like, oh, I didn't know.
Right. But I do remember sitting at my first part of my first assignment with Purina was to support the vet school, some of the vet schools. And the first one that I went to visit was Kansas State. And I remember sitting in the hotel room in Manhattan, Kansas. And I was having a sheer panic attack of what have I done? I was in a sweet spot in private practice and had a great staff and loved what I did. And now I'm publicly speaking on small animal nutrition. I'm like, what? This is got to be the worst decision ever. And little did I know, the pet food world is actually way more interesting than I ever could have imagined. And I think sometimes my coworkers would like to put me back in that scared box of public speaking because I talk a lot. So
that's cool though. That's really
pretty awesome. Good for you.
Did you just trial by fire get better at it, or did you take classes or join those leagues where you meet once a month to practice it?
Yeah, Toastmasters.
Toastmasters.
Yeah, we had, thankfully, we do have a really great professional development program at Purina. So I did a couple of those classes, and then a lot of it was just, repetition and trial by fire and feedback from colleagues and all of that just kind of kept me going and refined my skills.
Very cool. What is the coolest thing, your first year at Purina, what's the coolest memory you have there where you're like, wow, this is really the inner workings?
My coolest memory, is that what you said?
Yeah.
Yeah. Ooh, that's a good question. Nobody's ever asked me that. I honestly, and this is, I guess I found my nerd dumb people at Purina, but we have our largest plant is actually here in Denver, Colorado, and it's our oldest plant as well. And if you've ever been in Denver and driven to the airport, it's literally inches away from I-70 that goes through Denver. And we had the opportunity to come out here and visit the plant, and I was just blown away at just the scientific nature of everything, not only the ingredients that are there, but then the machinery. I mean, we manufacture and build the extruders that make our pet food. So it's not like we go to some outside mechanic, or engineering business and buy that equipment. We actually have the engineers on staff that build it. And then just the meticulous, cleanliness of the inside of our Purina plant. I was like, wow, this is cleaner than my kitchen. This is crazy. And so I just remember being like, okay, this company is doing things the right way. And that made me feel 1,000 times better about the career choice that I had made.
Very cool. What is it at the, walk us through, I think is the St. Louis location one of the headquarters? Where they do a lot of the nutrition testing with the animals?
Yep. So our head, so we're owned by Nestle. So technically we call, the mothership of Nestle over there in Switzerland. But Purina's headquarters, we were founded in St. Louis. So that's where our main campus is. And that's where I would say more of like the bench research goes on. So some of the more fine tuned, like little micronutrients and things that we might want to tweak, as well as we have a pilot plant. So say we have some idea of adding an ingredient or changing a little formula. We're going to run that and we're going to create that in a really small amount and then test it and look at it and all of that. And so all of that goes on our St. Louis campus. And then we have what we call our pet care facility, our pet care center that's out in St. Joseph, Missouri. So about 3.5 hours west. And that's where we have what we like to call them our taste testers, but it's our dogs and our cats that are out there. And all of the studies that we do at Purina are non-invasive. So basically what that means is things that would happen if you took your dog to the veterinarian and for a regular checkup. That's about as far as our research will go. We do a lot of looking at poop samples to understand how well is this formula being absorbed and utilized by the dogs. What does that do to their microflora? Because, that's a whole area that is just blowing up in both on the human side as well as the vet side, as like, what do all those bugs in our gut really do? Because like, some fun facts. There's over 1 billion species of bacteria in 1 gram of poop. So there is.
When a dog accidentally has an accident and then jumps out of the dog box and it hits me in the face, I got like 20 billion.
Yeah. Yep.
Okay.
Yep. Yep. So keep that in mind. And so like really
everybody wants to be a dog trainer and play with dogs all day, but I don't know.
20 billion species of bacteria right there, right there on your cheek.
Just a kiss.
Yeah, so we'll do, we look at things like that. We look at like the growth rates of puppies, and it is, I would say our pet care center out in St. Joseph, Missouri. If I get to come back in my next life, I want to come back as one of those dogs. We have over 50 play yards out there. They've got, this hiking trail, and they have technicians that are assigned to them to have certain enrichment activities every single day. So I would say our dogs out there sometimes get more interaction than like even my own dogs do at home. And it's critical for us because we have to understand what our pet food formulas are doing in our 4-legged consumers before we even put it out there to the 100 million dogs and cats that we feed.
So before I derailed you with my poop on my face story, what you were saying, you were testing fecal samples. I'm assuming urine.
Yep. Blood samples. Okay. Yep.
Coat, teeth.
Yep. We do a lot of looking, the dogs out there and the cats out there get dental done every 6 to 9 months because we really want to, that's another area of research of dental disease. It is so prevalent in our dogs and our cats. It's, 70 to 80% of dogs over the age of 3 have some form of dental disease, and it has all kinds of repercussions. As it relates to our sporting dogs, we know that, well, not only do they need teeth to, hold the birds in their mouths, it's kind of important, but then also that the severity of dental disease also is proportional to cognitive decline. So how their brain starts to really age more quickly is related to dental disease. So if we can try to crack the code on ways to better manage that through nutrition, perhaps, that can certainly not only enrich their lifespan, but certainly enrich their health span too.
Absolutely. Things like the shape of the kibble, does that have anything to do with, working on the tartar buildup and whatnot? It
can. We have certain formulas, like it's more in relation to how the kibble or what is putting the kibble together. So there's one of our veterinary diets that's specifically related or specifically formulated and has the VOHC seal, which is the Veterinary Oral Health Council, which is like a third party verifier to actually reduce plaque and tartar. It's called DH, so dental health. But there are some, that if they are a little bit more rich in fiber, that keeps the kibble together better. So that way, when the tooth crunches down on it, it almost acts like a toothbrush that's there. So it can certainly benefit them. There's also some people who say, oh, well, the constant crunching, similar to when we were talking about the pounding of their joints and on concrete, that the constant crunching of kibble causes micro fissures in their teeth, and then the bacteria can get in there, and then that leads to plaque and tartar. Right now, we don't really have. That's kind of a theory. There's not any real good science to support that. So, ideally, we would brush our dog's teeth every day, or at least every 2 days. But the latest survey I saw was only like 3% of pet owners do that. And I am not one of those 3%.
I was just gonna ask. Like, I don't want to put you on the spot, but the people need to know.
What about those greeny things? You think those things work?
So there's really good dental treats out there for sure. And there are a number of different brands. I would say my key for your listeners is to look for that VOHC seal. So that should be on the package somewhere to show that they have tested it. Somebody else has verified their test results, that it does really do what it says that it does.
That makes sense. I had a question about some of the different types of food that you guys have at Purina, because we talk a lot about ProPlan, and that's what fuels the truck of Lone Duck and Bob's little ditty there. But you guys do have a lot of good foods. Like, is there? I don't know how to ask. Like, is one better than the other? Like, what are some of the differences between like the Purina One, the Dog Chow, the ProPlan? Like, is it just kind of the breakdown of fats and proteins and things like that, or is it like the how good the ingredients are? Like, can you give us a little breakdown behind that?
Yeah, for sure. So it really goes into what we call our nutritional philosophy, which is that every pet out there deserves excellent nutrition, no matter the price point that owner wants to pay or can pay, because sometimes those are not the same. And it's the same quality chicken or the same quality turkey or salmon or whatever protein source goes into Dog Chow, that goes into Purina One, that goes into ProPlan. And so it's not like we're like, oh, this chicken has less nutrients, so we're going to put it in Dog Chow. If you think about that from like a business standpoint, the time that it would take to like differentiate all that and then designate into each of the formula or each of the brands, it wouldn't be cost effective. I would say that we really start with like the nutrients that the pets need, and then how those ingredients supply the nutrients. So it's like, dogs need protein, they need carbohydrates, they need fats. And so it's like, what ingredients can we put in there in the right combination that's going to allow them to get all of those nutrients? And so it then kind of, when you step back one more layer, it's like, what are we trying to accomplish? And by we, like, what is the consumer or the owner trying to accomplish through nutrition? If it's something that is like super specialized, that's where ProPlan really shines. Like, that's what I feed Finn and Journey, eat 30-20 Sport. It's all life stages. So it was awesome when Journey was a puppy. Finn and Journey could eat the same food, which is also really important because I travel a fair amount for Purina. And my husband is an arborist. So I need to keep things very simple for him in the dog care space. So it was great that I was like, it can meet the needs of the puppy and it can meet Finn's needs. And they are high drive, high burn in calorie dogs that need that concentrated nutrition. Dog Chow, it's our It was our foundational brand that launched almost 100 years ago, which is crazy to think about. And it's still fantastic. It's not going to have all the kind of like shiny bells and whistles that Pro Plan does, and it's not going to be as refined in the meeting those specific nutritional needs, but it's still a super awesome brand of dog food, and it's had more testing and quality assessment and all of that than any other pet food out there on the market. So there's really honestly not a whole lot of difference in the quality. It's just going to be, again, kind of addressing those specific needs. And because we are a consumer packaged goods company, it's also where that specific shopper likes to shop. So when we think about like the consumer, without getting too markety, but when we think about like the person that's going to buy Pro Plan, they really like to either shop online or they like to shop in a designated pet specialty store. So like a PetSmart or a Tractor Supply or something like that. So that's where Pro Plan is only sold, versus the Purina One consumer likes to be able to pick up their dog food wherever they're shopping. So you can buy it in the grocery store, you can buy it at Target, you can buy it at Petco, you can buy it at, online, all of that. So that's kind of a little peek behind the marketing of where we sell the different brands.
Makes sense. What are some ways that, and we've talked about it on the podcast before, but I'd love your opinion. But, I feed once a day. Mm-hmm. I float my food. What is the optimal way for our sporting breeds that work hard every day to get the most nutrition out of that bowl that we give them?
Yeah, that's a great question. And based on the research that was done, so Arlie Reynolds is one. He's a veterinary nutritionist. He worked for Purina for, probably close to 30 years. Had a research facility up in Alaska, and he also was a champion sled dog racer. He won the Triple Crown of sled dog racing. But it was a great opportunity for us as Purina, because we can use exercise as kind of that natural stressor. And especially as it relates to our sporting dogs, of they're out there, they are, sometimes when we're out pheasant hunting, and we as humans will walk 10 or 12 miles of public land, and Finn probably runs 35 or 40 miles. And so having Arlie's research facility there and being able to use those sled dogs and look at, okay, how do we feed these guys and when do we feed them? And what he found with his research was that it's really, the dogs had greater endurance when they were on a fast. So not having breakfast, but having had dinner the night before, and giving that GI tract, time to digest all of that food and absorb it, and then turn it into energy for their bodies to use the next morning, or the next, when you go out on the hunt the next day. So it really is, when you think about it from a physiology standpoint, it's it takes water from their bodies to dump into their GI tract and start breaking down all that stuff, which is why, I float Finn and Journey's food as well. Even when we're not active, it's not hunting season, they get their food floated every single day. They get fed once a day as well. And so that way their body doesn't have to dump that moisture in there right away to start the breakdown process. And then it also takes blood flow. And so if we are dumping in moisture, we're dumping in blood flow. And yet then we're also at the same time, or maybe an hour later, asking them to go, run around and hunt birds with us. That doesn't make a logical sense, right? We want their moisture to be in their cells. We want their blood flow to be in their lungs and their muscles and all of that. So let's take advantage of the fact that they are resting the night before and feed them then. So that way the digestion can happen, so we can hit the ground running the next morning.
Very good. So again, DVM Bob was correct.
Yes. Yep.
Now, there
I mean,
are some people that argue that point, though, that you should make a smaller meal in the morning and, a full meal at night type of thing. I don't love the idea of them running with food in their gut.
yeah. I mean, it's certainly, especially if you've got a deep chested dog, we know bloat can happen anytime, but that's just a risk factor. And why put them through that if we can feed them at a different time? I will say Finn does get a little hangry in the morning during hunting season. So it's literally like a handful of kibble that I throw in his water bowl. And it's mostly then to get him to also drink some water before we go. So he's pre-hydrating. Then he's not as grumpy when we first start getting out in the field.
That's awesome. That question, all of that kind of brings me to one of the topics I want to cover with you, the supplement industry in our canine friends. So there's, ones that do electrolytes, and then there's ones that do, joint health, glucosamine and chondroitin tabs, and Dosequin Plus, and fish oils, and powders that you spread over the food. What are your thoughts on supplements for our canine athletes?
How long do you have? I'm just kidding. I will keep it concise. But yeah, I mean, it is. My first words of wisdom are: it is the wild, wild west out there with supplements. It is. I think the last statistic that I saw in 2023 was it was a $2.1 billion industry just for pets. So I can't imagine if you like lump human supplements in with that. But I mean, it's upwards of 80% of pet owners give supplements. And so it is really super critical. One, because it's a highly lucrative business. It's something that people are looking for themselves. And then there's the anthropomorphism of like, well, if I'm taking this, my pet should take this. So it's easy for people who are less, a little bit unscrupulous to jump into this market because it's very loosely regulated. It's like all you have to do is notify the FDA that you are putting this out into the market, and just like, drop them a text and say, hey, here's my supplement that I'm going to be selling. And, they don't check to see if what's on the outside matches what's on the inside. So I would say buyer beware. I would also highly recommend talking to your veterinarian because as veterinarians, when we recommend a supplement, it's our license that's on the line. So if there is something wrong with it or, something of that nature, it can come back on us. So when we make those recommendations, so I didn't mention this earlier, but I still practice. So I'm in a clinic a couple of days a month because that's why I went to vet school. And I love that part of it too. So it's like when I'm talking to clients and if I'm going to make a recommendation of XYZ supplement, I've done my due diligence to make sure that the company has done some sort of third-party verification and safety and quality check, that there's research to support why I'm recommending that supplement, and that there's research that says this supplement will cause no harm. Because that's like, especially, I feel like maybe it's because I live in Colorado, but like CBD is the latest panacea that is going to cure all things. And there is some good research that's starting to come out about it. But like that one particularly, if the hemp is grown and not checked for heavy metals, and you're giving that as a supplement, or if there's THC that is in there, that's toxic to our dogs. So that's the one where it's like, the CBD part does actually, we've got research to show that it's good. It can be good for arthritis in some cases. It can be good for epilepsy and things like that. But it's like you have got to make sure that it is pure and that it does not have that THC and those heavy metals.
So how would a layman like me know which one, that you're buying off of Amazon? You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, so you would want to look to see like do they have there's one that's it's called the NASC, so it's the National Animal Supplement Council. So if it's, if it has if they've followed the standards of the NASC, that's a great one to at least give you a first start of like, well, they looked at some protocols that they needed to follow when they were making this supplement. And then it's like, okay, what are you trying to accomplish while by giving this supplement? Is it for pain? Is it for, joint health? Is it for GI health? And then looking to see, is there, it takes a little bit of due diligence, but like, is there research to support that this specific thing does what it says it does? And then looking for the company, like, do they have a phone number on there? And can you call them and say, hey, who checks to make sure that what's on the outside matches what's on the inside? So again, I think that's where it's sometimes, not sometimes, a lot of times we as veterinarians get like, oh, you're just recommending this because you're trying to pad the bill and you want to make this higher. And it's like, well, no, we're recommending it because we have done the research to know that this is a good company, that yes, omega-3 fatty acids, there's good research to show that it helps with arthritis. And yes, this is the right dosage and it doesn't have added, heavy metals or something like that in there. So that's why I want you to buy this one.
So what would be that one?
Well, if you're like, we at Purina, we have two supplements that we have a whole suite of supplements, but in the sporting dog worlds that I love and that I give to my guys, one is Fortiflora, which is our probiotic. And man, I love that stuff. I love it from the fact that it is the most researched probiotic out there on the market for our dogs and cats. It also, it comes with the guarantee. It's been tested, 7 ways to Sunday for its safety and efficacy and all of that. But I love it for that kind of like intermittent diarrhea that happens with our dogs. But then also, especially during hunting season, sometimes dogs get where they don't want to eat because you're on the road or they're just so jazzed about, going hunting that they have no interest in actually eating. And we know exercise does suppress, your appetite for a short period of time. So adding that Fortiflora on top sometimes can be enough of an incentive because it's made with palatability enhancers, either on their food or in their water if they're not good water drinkers. But then again, then also if we think about our sporting dogs, if they are getting diarrhea, they're not absorbing their nutrients. And so we can't expect them to either maintain weight. And then we're also putting them at risk for injury if they're not, again, absorbing the right nutrients in the right amounts for the stress that we're asking them to put on their bodies. So there's that one. And then there's also our joint care, which there are a number of really great companies. I love Nutramax, which also, they put out Cosequin, Dasequin, their whole suite of joint supplements that's there. I love to start our puppies on joint supplements from the get-go. It's like they are going to be putting wear and tear on their bodies. So if we can set their joints up for success and have them have the right building blocks to handle inflammation and things like that from the start, I'm a big fan of that.
Okay. So let's say the Purina Joint and Health, what is in that makes it work?
Yeah. So it's got omega-3 fatty acids, which are like from fish oil, which do have really good research to show that it slows down and the inflammation process that can happen. So anytime there's like a tweak or a tear or sprain or strain, inflammation happens. Those omega-3 fatty acids from fish oil can help to kind of put that fire down a little bit. It's also got hyaluronic acid that's in there, which is also as part of like the joint fluid. So think of it like, putting a little grease in a squeaky, a squeaky door and that sort of thing. That's hyaluronic acid can help with that. It does the one part, it does have glucosamine and chondroitin in it as well. And I laugh a little bit about that because the research is all over the place on whether or not glucosamine and chondroitin actually do anything in the joint. But I'm also like, well, there's no research that shows that it's harmful. So it's like, if it might help, and it's also something that, all people I think if surveyed 1,000 people, 999 of them would say, yes, if I need to support my joints, it's glucosamine and chondroitin. So it's like, those are the buzzwords that are in people's heads. So I think that was, one of the reasons why we put it in there, but then also because it might help and there's no evidence to say that it hurts. So those are kind of the big pieces that are in there that I look for in different joint supplements.
As a trainer that is got 30 dogs in the kennel that are getting exercised immensely each day with like a day and a half rest, are there things that I can give them to help add weight, to help with recovery, to help with hydration, things of like those kind of supplements that you just, to me, again, I feel like they're somewhat snake oil where you're like, I don't know if this one actually does anything. And then if I were to do that, so I hate doing double questions, but all right. If I were to supplement them, how long should I wait to see results?
Yeah. So I think some of the supplements ones, the hydration ones, I have mixed feelings about, I will say. Our dogs don't sweat like people do. So they don't lose electrolytes like we do. So there's not a need to replace those. And sometimes I worry, like if you've ever had a dog that has been around salt water and they drink a bunch of salt water, there is a fire hose. Not good. Not good. I made that mistake as a very young what was I, a sophomore in college when I first got Maddie, and we went down for spring break. I took her down to the Florida coast with me, and she like drank the ocean water right when we got there, and I was like, "Oh, good, she's getting hydrated." Yeah. And then I was like, "This is terrible." Right?
Yeah, we did that in Maryland on a hunt, and they were sick.
Yeah. So, while those supplements are not the same concentration as seawater, it certainly, when you start jacking with electrolytes like that, can have a negative effect in their GI tract. But I will say one of the things, again, kind of going back to getting the dogs to drink water, when there are some dogs, when they are training, when they are hunting, like they have no interest in drinking water. And if adding a little bit of that makes it exciting for them, where they will drink, then I'm a big, I'm all for it. As long as it doesn't cause the fire hose out their back end. And I think every dog is going to be a little bit different on what their needs are from a hydration standpoint, from a nutrition calorie standpoint. And sometimes you do get those dogs, we talked about feeding once a day. And sometimes I've got a friend who has, a 40-pound German short hair pointer, and like that dog could eat 6 cups of food a day. It just it's like a little hummingbird. And it's like trying to feed 6 cups of food to a 40-pound dog's stomach in one sitting is a lot. And so oftentimes I'll recommend okay, well, when you get done training and they've cooled down where they're not like panting insanely, giving them, let's try giving them 2 cups then, and then they get 4 cups at dinner. Like that's a little bit more, you've got a little bit of a separation there and a lag time. And so it's not, jamming up their whole stomach and beginning of their intestines there. So it's really going to depend. Oftentimes what I see and what I hear when I'm, working with some of the other kennels and stuff, and they're like, this dog just won't put on weight. And they're in this kennel situation. We'll ask well, let's try moving them either to a different kennel within the run or actually taking them out, and can they come inside? And they might just be one of those like anxious, nervous dogs, and they are pacing or they are just trembling the whole time. And it's like, you probably can't feed that dog enough because the anxiety and their energy level is just burning so fast. So can we look at tweaking their environment a little bit to help them to use their calories more efficiently?
I would like to take 2 seconds to do a public service announcement on that, because there have been trainers of every breed across the country that get slammed on Facebook because somebody came and got a skinny dog. Sometimes they're at fault, but other times it's not the case. It's actually the dog's fault, right? It is got a high metabolism. It's anxious. It's a pacer. It's got something going on additional to the exercise it's already getting in training, that no matter what Bob Owens or Timmy and Timbuktu does, to your point, if I get a dog like that, they get in different treatment, right?
Yeah.
Like they don't get certain things that other dogs have the freedom to do, because we've got to kind of contain that anxiety and or excitement or nervous energy, but they're burning calories just standing because of who they are as a dog. So don't jump to conclusions that person did wrong by your dog. But if you're a good dog trainer, you should alert these people like, hey, Fido's getting a little thin. This is what we're doing to mitigate it. And if we don't see results in a timely fashion, we need to send it home, type of thing. That's what we do here. But yeah, it's good advice. Have you ever heard of satin balls?
I have not.
I'm about to teach you a thing about a satin ball.
Well, all right.
So one year I had a couple, back in the day, I would train anything that would, if the check cleared, I'd train it, right? So I had a lot of German short hairs, and they are hard to keep weight on, just like you told about your friend. And so I was talking to another trainer at a hunt test, and they showed me a satin ball. And so you basically take all sorts of conglomeration of foods. You've got beef, like raw beef, eggs with the egg shells, oats, some gelatin powder, maybe. But there's like a whole recipe online, and it's just, and you make it into a meatball, maybe the size of a baseball, and you add that to its food. And it's like super, super calorie dense that, within a week, that dog puts on 3 pounds, 5 pounds, and on a 40-pound dog, that's 10% of its body weight.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden it's like, holy cow. And then you can scale it back and stop doing the satin ball. But in a real rough situation, I've found it to be very helpful.
Well, all right.
I think you mix in some bran flakes too. Sprinkle them on top. I'm serious, it works. Anywho, all right, let's bring it on home, Bob. You had mentioned, well, before we get into that one, let's talk about dogs that have skin allergies, ear infections. Can we also give a real quick, what does it do as I say, not as I do, or something? Maybe find some interesting and safe recipes online. I did a quick googly goo, and there's some real interesting doozies out there on satin balls. So also, if you're doing that, use your head. It worked for me, everyone.
Okay.
Whatever.
Well, I'll double down on it. We're good.
Don't call me if you got a problem. I'm just saying it worked for me. And I didn't go to vet school, so don't take my true advice all the time. Fair enough, everybody. All right.
Moving on then.
Moving on. Allergies in dogs. So currently my English setter has battled ear infections and itchy skin her whole life. And she's been on different diets, but obviously most of her eating career has been Purina Pro Plan and the chicken and rice formula.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts on the actual diet or gut biome or adjustments I could make for a dog that has allergies?
Yeah. So certainly environmental allergies are the most common, with actually if we lump into that, flea allergy is actually the number one cause of allergies in our dogs. And it doesn't have to be that they are crawling with fleas. It's just that they have an overreaction to a single flea bite. So, like, for example, if you're allergic to bee stings, or allergic to bees and you get stung by a bee, your whole leg, could swell up. Where I'm not allergic to bees. I get stung by a bee and I get, a little quarter size welt on my leg, and that's about it. So the same for our dogs. If they are flea allergic and they get bit by that flea, they have this massive reaction to the flea allergy and they feel like they've gotten bitten by like 1,000 fleas. So it's for those guys, especially, that's kind of my first recommendation is like, they've got to be, if your dog is allergy of any sort, have them on some sort of flea prevention from a veterinarian, not from, XYZ drugstore, and making sure that they're on flea prevention year round. And so that's the first one. Second, to support their skin. Certainly when we go back to fish oil, like that is, those omega-3 fatty acids that come from fish are almost magical in how they help with inflammation. So that's probably my first recommendation second, I guess, flea prevention year round. And then if they are having, allergies, having them on a fish-based diet that's got that concentrated amount of omega-3s coming from fish oil. Is the second one. We used to recommend all the time, like, oh, well, try Benadryl and it's 1 milligram per pound 3 times a day. Most of the research, what we've seen is like that just doesn't really do much of anything for our dogs with environmental allergies. And so then it's like, if they flare at different times of the year, and that's where we look that they're more like seasonal allergies. And then it's like, okay, if we know in the springtime, things really flare up, when they come out, when they come back from, training or whatever, like wiping down their hair, their paws to kind of get those allergens off of them. So it's not just kind of that little fueling of the fire that's there. And if we can keep that threshold lower, that's ideal.
Okay. So let's just say if you were me, would you put her on the salmon diet from ProPlan and try that for how long, type of thing?
Yep. Yeah. I certainly, I would switch her over to salmon. And then, like if we look at it, people will say, oh, well, chicken, that it is the number one allergen that our dogs react to. It's usually when they have allergies to food, it's usually the protein source that they're reacting to. But that said, it's kind of like when you look at the back of a bag, that even though, say, the bag of chips doesn't even have nuts in it, but you read at the bottom that it's produced in a facility that also produces nuts or whatever, that I feel like that caveat should be on all pet food, because there can be cross contamination of, if, whether it's us or any of the other pet food companies, like they run they run a batch of chicken and rice through the line, and then they might run the batch of salmon and rice and then beef and rice. So there's, they can have that cross contamination. So even if it's not listed in the ingredient deck, it might have like little bits, and even they've done studies, and we've published stuff in, in peer-reviewed journals that say, they've checked for cross-contamination and it happens. So, you could do that first switch. And then if we're not seeing any results, usually we say in about 8 weeks, then looking to be like, okay, do I need to go to a therapeutic diet? So something that's only available through veterinarians. And that's where we do make sure, like if we have, we've got a couple of diets for food allergies, and they're produced in a specific line in the factory that doesn't get anything else that goes through it, so that we know that it is, basically sterile of any other protein sources.
I had a dog a couple of years ago that was allergic to the world, like ran the panel on its skin, and it was allergic to everything. Like hair falling out. I mean, it looked like death's door. And we did put it on the Purina allergy diet, and it's like there's almost no ingredients in it.
Yeah,
And,
like our HA. Yeah.
yeah, and all of a sudden, boom, hair started growing back. It looked a lot better. And if I remember correctly, he could wean her back off of that at some point, and her body built up like an immunity to stuff, and she became normal again. So that was shout out to that one.
Yeah, for sure. I will say for your listeners, for food allergies, the blood test, like sometimes veterinarians will offer a blood test, or you could do a blood test. You probably, if you want to go to the Google machine, you could probably find blood test for food allergies in dogs. And there is very little correlation to a blood test for food allergies and actually what they are allergic to in real life. But for skin allergies, so for environmental allergies, you can certainly they can do blood tests. Kind of the gold standard is to do like the little skin test where they do a little prick test on the dogs. But food allergies and blood tests do not correlate. So don't waste your money on any of that.
Good pro tip. Thank you. What are your thoughts on all of these designer raw food deals that are popping up advertising on podcasts? And like, I think Joe Rogan's got Farmer's Dog, right? What are some of these that boutique-y companies doing raw diet and or the homegrown guy or gal that's like cutting up a turkey leg, cutting up a duck bill, throwing in this and sprinkling some stuff on and giving it a carrot?
Yeah. So I'll kind of divide those in two categories.
Yeah.
So like the raw food diet really scares me for a number of reasons. One, it is, if we go back to the satin ball that you were talking about, I'm like, that is not complete and balanced. Like to try to get all of the right macronutrients, so like the protein, fat, carbs, all of that in the right ratio. In fairness to the satin
ball, though, you still feed them their regular diet.
Right.
Okay. So they're getting the pro plan and a ball. But go on.
But if we're only feeding satin balls or anything of that nature with like, it is very, very hard to get a raw diet that is complete and balanced. Yeah. And if there's like a truly raw diet, the thing about our dogs is Salmonella, E. coli, Listeria, all of the bad things that we try to cook out of our food and why we cook our food stays alive in their GI tract. So even though they might not get sick from it, it can be passed out into the environment. And we know where our dogs lick and clean themselves, and then sometimes they come and they lick us. And so they can become an infectious agent themselves. So that gives me a lot of angst as a veterinarian. And I just was, there's a veterinarian that I follow, Dr. Crocker, and she's an emergency vet. And she just did this massive surgery and pulled out, it was this giant wad that was inside this dog's abdomen because of a piece of a bone that had actually gone through the intestinal wall, and then the body had an abscess and walled it off. The fact that the dog lived was insane. But that's also a risk when we feed our dogs those bones, is they can cut through that intestine, and then you're in a world of hurt. And our dogs are not wolves. And they
Thank you. I was just going to play that devil's advocate for all those folks out there.
I love when people do that, though.
Oh my God.
What do you think your poodle mix something or other is very far away from just running wild and killing?
And wolves live to 5.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, that too.
Right. I'm I would like all of my dogs to live more than 5 years.
Mm-hmm. Well, this is exactly why we invented dog food and have put so much time and energy and research into having people like you who can say okay, there are better things out there. We can do this in a better way, and maybe we can go on a podcast and talk about it. Yeah,
maybe with some really cool people.
I'm gonna play one more devil's advocate.
Okay.
So you're a marathon runner.
Mm-hmm.
I'm assuming you have a nice diet, healthy diet.
Sure.
I mean, for the most part.
For the most part, yeah.
I like to eat healthy, got a garden and I eat my salad from the garden. I've got my own chickens and, I do the best I can to pick good foods that aren't in a bag, like
is this now about you? I think we transitioned to
no. So it's an analogy, right? So I'm trying not to eat processed food.
Sure. Yep.
Okay.
Right. So a lot of the processed foods that humans eat are making us fat and making us, have multiple chins. Shout out Kevin.
I know. I gotta make sure I look up or something because I just this angle is not good for me.
So, but the point is, there is a debate about that for our dogs, right? It's bleeding into our hearts and minds of anthropomorphism that says your dogs, if it's coming from a bag, it's processed, right? And so, what is the thought behind that for those people?
Yeah. So couple of things. One, I would venture to guess that the bag of chips or the, box of whatever crackers or whatnot, packaged good that you are wanting to consume was actually put together to be a complete and balanced diet, and by a board certified nutritionist, right? I don't think Frito-Lay or any other chip company that's out there is expecting that chip to be 100% of all of the macro and micronutrients that you need. So versus our kibble, which is very similar, if we kind of make the analogy, if we want to go anthropomorphize, to feeding an infant formula, right? So it's got all of the macro and micronutrients, vitamins, minerals, protein, fat, all of that in this powdered formula that we are going to feed to help that infant to thrive and become a functioning part of society. So that is very similar to how we make the pet food. And then when we look at if you take it one step further and you look at the digestibility study, so how much of those nutrients are actually being used and absorbed by the dogs and cats. That's why we do a lot of poop studies, right? Is because we need to know how much is actually coming out the backside, and making sure that it's very little. And that's the bonus is it's anywhere between 8 and 10% of the food that we start with is all that is leaving. So 90+% is actually being absorbed and utilized by the pet's diet, or by the pet's body. And so I do not, while they both are in packages, I think that's about where the similarity stops. And the other thing that's coming out is they're overcooked and they're burnt in the manufacturing process. And some of the pet food companies are saying they're gently air dried. Well, all pet food in a kibble form is dried with air. There's really, I don't know how else you dry something.
Summer breeze.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. So the way that pet food is made is no different really than if cooking something in your Instapot. And so it's done under steam and pressure and heat. But that's again where you got to look at knowing what happens during that cooking process and having those experts on staff to know, okay, if 25% of vitamin A is destroyed when we put it in that heat and that pressure, then we have to start with 25% more than they need. So then you've got what we need as 100% at the end. And that's where, it's some of these smaller boutique brands, I would be hard pressed to say that they have, nearly 500 researchers and scientists putting together the food in the right way, in the right equipment, with the right taste as well, because it has to taste good to the dogs and cats, or they're in it. Because if they don't eat it, it doesn't matter how nutritious it is. So it takes all of that expertise to really, hone in on a successful product.
But I do love the people sitting at home who are like, no, it's fine. I know all of these things.
Oh, yeah.
And I gave them a blueberry too. So they're fine. They had all their nutrients.
Yeah. And a superfood. Mm-hmm.
Yes,
Yep.
I measured.
One of your big things on Instagram is talking about the ideal body condition of a dog. And
Yeah.
one of the things that we'll hear during hunting season, or questions that will be asked of me via the internets, would be, should I add weight to my dog before hunting season so that they're like have more fat store so they stay warmer?
Yep.
Then the other is, should I change the dog's diet? So like, could I do 30-20 during hunting season and then go to like a normal, normal's not the right word, but a different food,
Yep.
a maintenance diet the rest of the year when they're not working so hard, et cetera, et cetera. What are your thoughts on those kinds of questions that roll in?
Yeah. I would say, some dogs, if they are like high burners, and by the end of this, like if you are going out like, every day of hunting season, or you're out 75-80% of hunting season, and these dogs are high burners, I'm not opposed to having them be a little bit thicker in the middle to start. So that way they're not, skin and bones by the end. I would say that's probably the exception more than the rule, for sure. But what we do know is that it takes about 12 weeks for, like, if you're feeding a 30-20, it takes about 12 weeks for the metabolism to ramp up and really be able to tap in. So our dogs use fat for endurance. That is their primary fat fuel. And if we feed them that higher fat diet at 20%, this is going to get a little nerdy, but I think everybody remembers from high school that the mitochondria is the powerhouse of the cell, right? Like that is the little furnace that burns and churns. And if we feed them that higher fat diet, it actually helps them to maximize the number of mitochondria that they can have in their muscles. So they have that better endurance, but it takes 12 weeks to ramp that up. And then certainly there's a lag phase. So it takes about 12 weeks to ramp down. So when you think about that, that's like almost half the year right there. So it's just easier to keep them on that same diet and dial back the quantity that you're feeding in the off season.
Great answer. Ideal body condition. Now walk us through what that looks like in your eyes when a dog comes into your office and you're like, dang, you did a good job keeping this sucker in shape.
Yeah. So there's 3 things that I look for. First, you check ribs, then their waistline, and then you want them to have an abdominal tuck. So you want to be able to feel their ribs. I like to say it should feel like running your fingers over the back of your hand for their rib cage. And that would put them, I'm like, okay, that's box 1 checked. They should have an hourglass appearance, right? So their rib cage should kind of dip in and then flare back out at their hips. And then they should not look like a log when you look at them from the side. So their rib cage should be lower than their belly, and their belly should kind of tuck up like that. So that would put them, it's a little phrase coined, the healthy hug. So you check their ribs, their waistline, and in their belly, and you put all that together, and that puts them in ideal body condition. And that was, that's just not like something that I or my colleagues came up with. It was all based on research that we did, and it was probably one of the things that endeared me to this company before I even started working for them. And it's called our lifespan study. So we had 48 Labrador Retriever puppies, and we split them into 2 groups. They're paired litter mates. One group got to eat as much as they wanted 3 times a day, which I feel like is a Labrador dream. And the other group was exposed to 25% fewer calories than their litter mate ate the day before. So it wasn't huge. It was about a difference of about 400 calories per day between the 2 groups. And what we found were the guys that had 400 calories less per day lived almost 2 years longer than their paired litter mates. And the other kicker was it was like 3 years later that they needed to be treated for diseases like arthritis and diabetes and hypothyroidism and things that oftentimes will shorten the career of our bird dogs. And if we just keep them lean and feed them to ideal body condition, we can help to stave that off.
Very good. I got a chubby dog downstairs. Her name's Prairie. She's kind of built like a sausage her whole life.
Come on now.
I mean, I'm busting her chops.
She's very sausagey, but she just had a litter. Like,
yeah, I know.
It's been a little
12
while
weeks
now.
ago or something. But
yeah,
but getting weight off
she's doing
of her.
her best.
So I guess what I'm using myself as an example for everybody else. Like, as I'm putting her on this diet and she's starting to go back out and train regularly and try and get that stomach tucked again and get the hourglass again, I've got to cut calories. What's a safe and fair way to the dog to do that? Oh, what's up, Finn?
I know this is I love it.
The dogs are starting to make an appearance. Yeah. So, I mean, I kind of like our blanket recommendation, generic recommendation is to kind of dial back the calories by about 25%. So if you're feeding, I'm not good at math, so I like try to keep it very simple. Like if you're feeding 2 cups of food a day, right? So then you're going to go back to a cup and a half. Sometimes you have to do that. I don't know that this has been identified as a true symptom in dogs, but I like to say, like, especially in the off season with Finn, when he gets very volume sensitive. So I'll start to dial back the quantity because we're not hunting all the time. And he gets a little bit annoyed with that. So I'll add like shredded cabbage. So like the coleslaw mix before you add all of the goodness of the vinegar and mayonnaise and whatnot. Just the plain shredded cabbage to just give that volume, but without the calories. And so to kind of help wean him back down to his maintenance amount of the sport.
That's a great pro tip because my dog, I have a golden retriever who also gets a little sensitive about how her weight is and how I like the healthy hug too, because I feel like one, that speaks to me personally as well. But then also with Bird, she needs, she's got to work on her tummy a little bit. And she like finishes her food and then like looks at you like, we're not done. Like this is, I need more.
Yeah.
But I keep trying to cut her back, but I like that little tip of kind of like a calorie-free filler.
Yeah. And usually they like it. I mean, it's crisp and, it's got that extra moisture in there and it's maybe a little bit sweet. And so most dogs, I would say, typically like the shredded cabbage.
That's awesome. Well, Dr. Ruth Ann, is there anything that we didn't ask you that you think would be something you'd want to talk about?
That is a great question. I mean, I feel like we covered a lot.
Do you have any fun hunting plans?
Oh yeah, any good hunting trips?
Ooh, I know. I was at a Women on the Wing banquet and had a couple of glasses of wine, as they do on purpose. I did almost come home with a German Shorthair puppy. That's a story for a different day. But I also may have been divorced if I had actually come home with that puppy. But I was about 3 seconds away in a live auction from getting a puppy.
That's awesome.
It was not one of my finer moments. But I did bid on a hunt up in Northeast Colorado. So we'll go chase some pheasants. But right now, that and then we typically go up to North Dakota. I've got some friends just outside of Bismarck. And we go spend the weekend up there. But that's right now all I've got officially nailed down. But in the next couple of weeks, I'm sure we'll start getting some more formal hunting plans.
Yeah, I feel like it's starting to roll around where the group text messages are coming in going, who's got weekends, who's taking time off, let's go. So,
that does remind me, I do have a duck hunt coming up it'll be in January out in Oklahoma with apparently a rowdy bunch of folks, but that always makes for a good time.
Good for you. That's awesome. And you'll be at the DU Expo in August, right?
Yep. In Memphis. I think the dates are the 1st through the 3rd. I'm excited because this year DUX is actually indoors. The last time 2 years ago was at the Texas Motor Speedway on the center of the track outside in May, and it was like 98 degrees outside.
That's terrible planning.
Terrible planning. Yes. Yes. So excited about air conditioning.
Air
in
conditioning will
Memphis
be nice
in August.
Very cool. And what are you doing there?
Yeah, so I'll be speaking the top 10 nutrition questions for sporting dogs that I get, and then also a session on first aid.
Very cool. Well, if anybody plans on going to the DUX, the expo in August, make sure you swing by, watch and listen to Dr. Ruth Ann. Everybody, do me a favor, tell everyone where they can find you on the old Instagrams and elsewhere.
Yeah, so they can find me on Instagram at PetVetRuthAnn. That's my main channel.
Very good. Very good. Well, we'll also put the link below in the show notes. Everybody who tuned in to another episode, I want to tell you how much Kevin and I appreciate you week in, week out tuning in. If you enjoyed it, leave us a little comment and go give Ruth Ann a follow on the Instagrams. And Dr. Ruth, we really do appreciate you. It was fun getting to know you here and chit chat. And so thank you so much.
Yeah.
For your time.
Yeah, likewise. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. Until next time, we'll catch you on the flip side.